Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. This short video is for my students who are working on the solo that I played over Paul David's backing track. It is a backing track in C most of the time, and I've tried in that little solo to stay as close as possible to chord shapes that you should know by now, so that you can sort of see how people build a solo based on the chords and their position. So not really thinking in modes or in pentatonic scales, but most of the time just building off of the chord shapes that you know. So it's an easier approach to start building a solo. It will help you see chords all over your neck. At least that was the idea. You can look at the solo, and I've printed the chords on the video so you can follow the chord changes when you listen to the solo. It's only like 30 seconds long, not that long. For this video I will just keep to the explanation of what I played and the notes I chose to play and where did they come from in relation to the chord shapes. So first of all, the chord shapes that you should know are the E shape, and then the bar chords with that E shape. So on the 8th fret it's a C chord, on the 5th fret it's an A chord, on the 3rd fret a G chord. So these are all bar chords with the E shape. Second chord you are supposed to know is the A shape in bar chords. On the 3rd fret that would be a C chord, on the 5th fret a D chord, and so on. The chord progression that we are playing is C, E7, F and G for the first line. So the first chord is C. You can look at the C like this, so an A shape on the 3rd fret, or an open C, or an E shape on the 8th fret. Now that open shape, C, is actually very much like D shape, but for the D shape we have an open D and then that little triangle on the top. If you look at your C shape, open shape, you got the same triangle on the top. It's just that the nut is doing a bit of the work, whereas with the D shape you have to use two fingers. C shape, it's the nut that is doing those two notes. If you move it over, it's that D shape that becomes an E when you play it on the 4th fret. It becomes a G when you play it on the 7th fret, and it becomes a C again when you play it on the 12th fret, because that's actually the same as doing this. And if you add the bass notes, so on the 12th fret, and if we use a bar, it will be that. So this C shape, now it's a G because I'm playing it on the 7th fret. For me it's sort of the same as the D shape, but just using more strings. The top these 3 strings are exactly the same. And with the C shape you got a few more bass notes. So I consider that as being the same shape. In the cage system they see this as a different shape, but I just see it as one. So this is the 3rd chord shape that you should know, the C shape or the D shape. And then shift it over to various positions to get different chords. So open, it's a C, in the 2nd position it becomes a D, or this. The 4th position becomes a E, the 5th position an F, 7th position a G, and so on. In this chord progression we use the 12th position as well, which is another C. So that's it for the chords. We have C, E7, F and G. E7 can be played here. This is just an E. If we add the 7th, it's that. So it's an A shape bar chord, and we open that G string to give it the 7th chord note. The E could be also in the C shape on the 4th fret, or C shape, or D shape if we just use the top 3 strings. On the 12th fret, which is exactly the same as open, just 1 octave higher. F, E shape on the 1st fret, or C shape on the 5th fret, or bar chord A shape on the 8th fret, or an octave up from this one, which would be on the 13th fret, the E shape. And then the G chord is an E shape on the 3rd fret, a C shape on the 7th fret, or an A shape on the 10th fret. This goes quite fast. I'm explaining it quite fast, but you can always pause the video and go back to revisit what I've said before. So 3 positions for every chord that you should know in order to be able to follow what I'm going to explain about the note choices in the little solo I've played. So I assume that this is knowledge that you have, and I will build from that to explain the notes I chose for the solo. You can look at the solo at a different video, but I will play each section on top of each chord to explain the notes I've chosen. So the first 4 chords, which is actually the first line of the backing track, is C, E7, F, and G. And you have to come up with something sensible to play on top of that. I chose to start from this C position, which is the 3rd position, A bar chord, A shape bar chord, and I played so the 5th and the root, the G and the C, and then I played the D, which is the 2nd degree on the C, and I bend that to the 3rd to go to this note. So in total I would have this is the melody, which is actually just outlining the chord shape. But instead of doing that, I bend it up. So it's the 5th, the root, the 2nd to the 3rd, and then back to the 2nd and the root, which is actually just this shape. It's all based around this simple chord shape, but it's the bend that makes it a bit special. And then the 2nd chord is that E7, or here. And I choose these 2 notes from the C shape. So actually the melody is, and this B note is of course the 5th in the E chord, and it's derived from this shape. And I just pick these 2 notes. And then it goes to F, and I just do this, which is same thing but half a tone up. So I pick these 2 notes from the chord shape, and then it goes to G, and I just play these 2 notes from that shape. I think I just play that B note instead of, so it's just that one. So it's C, E, F, G. As simple as that. The second line is C, A7 again, E7 again, sorry, and then G, and back to C. So the first line, da 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 da, that's the first line. The second line, the chords are more or less the same. It starts with C, then E7, and then G. So sort of a cadence back to C. For the second line, I play the same starting notes on that C, which are actually exactly the same notes, but I don't use that bend. I just do, and then to go to that E7, I just walk up to the E note, sorry, to the B note, sorry, the fifth of the E7. This is actually in that chord from E, so it's a chord note. And then it goes to C, the G, and back to C. We have that. For that G, I play this shape, but I embellish it a bit with. So this is the G shape, and I add a slight hammer on from the C to the, sorry, from the B to the C, and then I pluck the root, the G, in this shape. And I slide that one. And then it goes to C, and I just walk down from the G to F to land on C. So it's actually G, F, C. The F is not played on the backing track, but I play it in my lead line. So it goes down nicely from the G to the C. So the second line, C, very, very chordal. It's totally in the chords. The third line sort of builds up to a climax. You got that C again, back to the E7. So the first two chords are always the same. It goes to F, and then it goes to F minor, which is the nice thing because it's a very common thing. The third from the chord goes down half step, so it goes from major to minor. F is the fourth chord in C, C, D, E, F, the fourth chord. And a transition from the fourth chord major to the fourth chord minor is very common. The Beatles have done it all over the place. It gets used a lot. And it sounds really nice and melancholic. The chord is actually not in the key of C, it's borrowed from C minor. This is just theory, it doesn't really matter here. But just be aware that this technique is used a lot. So the third line is C, E7, F, F minor. So we have to emphasize that progression from major to minor. What I do there, for the first chord, it's a C. So I do a rake, as I say. So this is the shape, G, sorry, C. And I use the top 4 strings. I hammer to the D, which is the 9th degree in the chord. Then it goes to E7 again, and I bend this note, the D, to the E. So perfectly outlining the chords, C to E. This is the root from E. So I bend this note to the root. So C, bend that, I give it a short push from the D to the E, so back to the root of that E7 chord. And then it goes to F, F major, so I play from this shape, the A shape, which is C, the fifth in the chord. So it's based off the A shape, 8th fret, so it becomes an F chord. And then I walk up, and this is the root from the F chord. And then it goes to F minor, and I aim for that flat third. This is the root, this is the second, this is the major third, but now we're going to the minor third. So I emphasize that pushing the second to the flat third, so the G to the A flat. So in a standard F chord, the first chord, it would be F major, so we would have needed A, but since we moved to F minor, I'm going for that A flat, and I do that by bending the second to the flat third. So I come from this note, which is totally emphasizing that minor third on the F. We're on F, F minor, and we go back to C, and I use that C shape here. So you got an F minor, walking down to this shape, the top note, for the C chord. I slide up all the way to the root of the chord here, so to re-emphasize that C. The root of the chord, and then the next chord is E7, which is this D shape, but then here, and the seventh is this note, the root, that goes down 2 half steps, which is, if you remember the D shape and you do this, you get D7. Well, if you move this to the E, it's an E chord, and we lower that to the 7th, we get E7. I do this 1 octave up, and I just use the top 2 strings going from the regular E to the E7. So we have that minor third, which is just the E7, the root to the 7th, and the top string, the stop note stays the same. And now we're closing with F and G, F and G, before it goes back to C, which is the first chord of the whole progression. On the F I play that shape, which is an E shape, and I just play these 2 strings out of that chord, but I lower this note, the lowest one, to the major 7th. In the key of C, F as a 4th is a major 7 chord, so I can lower the root to the 7th, to the major 7. Gives you a nice melancholic sound. Then it goes to G, which is an E shape on the 3rd fret, then 1 octave up. I lower my pinky, I release my pinky to give me that 7th, and I just use that note and the one on the B string. I play like that, and the final notes, these 2 out of the G shape, which is an A shape bar chord on the 10th fret, which of course gives us a G. So F, G, and I'm back to C. this is just a C shape, just using these two notes. One octave up. And that's it. We're there. We're back to the first chord. So there you go. A solo based on the chord shapes as much as possible, without, I hope so, without losing too much of the bluesy character of the whole tune. So I try to stay as close to the chord shapes as possible, adding a few notes to go from one chord shape to the other, to give it some melodic feel. Otherwise it would sound a bit, I think, a bit programmed. And I hope it makes sense to you. I hope, I mean, the solo was not meant to be the most beautiful solo. The solo was meant to be a solo that could explain the use of chord shapes as stepping stones